Aboard the Zantrixian observation vessel, a sense of collective unease rippled through the research team. Deathworlders, they called the humans, a species that thrived on a planet filled with hostile predators, volatile climates, and an atmosphere barely suitable for sentient life. For centuries, the Zantrixians had observed such species from afar, their fragile physiology favoring a life of controlled environments and intellectual pursuits. But humans? Humans fascinated and disturbed them in equal measure. The lead researcher, Tilvax, adjusted the holographic display. Their propensity for violence is unparalleled, yet they remain absurdly cooperative. It defies logical analysis. The data stream flickered with video clips of Earth's historical conflicts, rescue missions, and extreme sports. Each scene was a contradiction: destruction alongside altruism, chaos laced with camaraderie. Perhaps they rely on brute force because their intellect is underdeveloped, ventured Lyrith, a junior researcher. She gestured toward a graph illustrating humanity's relatively primitive technological timeline. Their advancements are millennia behind ours. Tilvax's antennae twitched with disapproval. Yet they've survived. And thrived. On that planet, he expanded an image of Earth, a swirling mass of storms, deserts, and tectonic instability. They endure conditions that would annihilate us within moments. The question isn't why they fight. The question is how they persist. Curiosity had driven the Zantrixians to undertake their latest experiment, covertly observing human military basic training. It was, by all accounts, a rite of passage designed to harden individuals both physically and mentally, a bizarre and brutal tradition unique to Deathworlders. The Zantrixians theorized that understanding this process could unlock secrets to human resilience, perhaps even teach their own species something about survival. As the Zantrixian vessel maintained orbit, their stealth drones descended to Earth, embedding themselves around a sprawling military base. Holographic feeds linked back to the observation room, where the researchers gathered in anticipation. The first day of training began with a cacophony that jolted the researchers into stunned silence. Human drill instructors, clad in harsh uniforms, barked commands with a ferocity that seemed almost predatory. Recruits, some barely out of adolescence, scrambled to obey, their movements frantic and disorganized. Are they attacking their own kind? Lyritha's voice wavered, her eye stalks narrowing in confusion. Tilvax magnified the feed, focusing on one instructor pacing before a line of recruits. His voice boomed, though the Zantrixians had difficulty parsing the nuances of human language. No, Tilvax finally said. It appears to be a method of indoctrination. Observe their body language. Despite the verbal aggression, none are fleeing. The recruits were herded toward a muddy field, where they were instructed to crawl beneath barbed wire, while simulated gunfire echoed overhead. Sweat and grime quickly coated their bodies as they struggled forward. The Zantrixians recoiled at the sight. Why subject themselves to this willingly? Lyrith asked, incredulous. It's conditioning, Tilvax replied, though uncertainty tinged his voice. Physical hardship to strengthen their bodies, fear simulations to harden their minds. Yet their willingness, it's peculiar. One drone focused on a young recruit who faltered midway through the course. He hesitated, visibly exhausted, but another recruit reached back, shouting something encouraging before helping him forward. They are cooperating, noted Tilvax, his voice tinged with surprise. In conditions designed to isolate and test the individual, they choose to unite. Illogical, muttered Lyrith. Cooperation wastes energy in such a scenario. Perhaps that is their strength, Tilvax mused, antennae curling in thought. An anomaly born of adversity. Let's continue observing. The Zantrixians watched as the training escalated to what the humans called Hell Week. The name alone sent a ripple of unease through the researchers. It began with an ear-splitting alarm that dragged recruits from their bunks in the dead of night. Groggy and disoriented, they stumbled outside into the cold, rain pelting their faces as instructors barked orders. The aliens observed the recruits standing at attention, shaking from both the chill and exhaustion. This is beyond unnecessary, Lyrith said, her voice sharp. They've deprived themselves of sleep, weakened their bodies, and now they're exposed to harsh elements. Their efficiency will plummet. Tilvax didn't reply immediately, his eyes fixed on the display. The recruits were thrown into a series of grueling tasks, carrying heavy equipment through waist-deep mud, performing drills in frigid water, and running endless laps on uneven terrain. The Zantrixians noted how the recruits' movements became slower, their steps heavier. Yet none stopped. Even those who stumbled found a way to rise again. "It's not efficiency they seek," Tilvax finally said, his tone thoughtful. "This is a test of thresholds, not just of the body but of the mind." The feed zoomed in on one recruit who was clearly at his breaking point. His uniform was soaked, his face pale with exhaustion, and his breathing labored. He stumbled and fell during a weighted march, landing face-first in the mud. The instructor shouted, but he didn't move. "This one has reached his limit," Lyrith said flatly. "Surely they will remove him now." To the alien's astonishment, the recruit's teammates stopped, rallying around him. One reached down and pulled him to his feet while another adjusted the weight he was carrying, taking on part of his burden. Together, they pushed forward, their steps synchronized despite the strain. "Fascinating," Tilvax murmured. Even in his failure, they do not abandon him. They adapt, redistributing their resources to ensure his survival. "That is highly inefficient," Lyrith countered. "They risk compromising the entire group for one individual."
Why?
Tilvax pondered the question as he observed another interaction. A recruit who had been lagging behind suddenly caught up after a teammate shouted encouragement. Despite the physical toll, the struggling recruit managed to keep pace, driven by the sheer force of will rather than any measurable strength. "Perhaps it is not inefficiency," Tilvax said slowly. "It is reinforcement. Their collective effort strengthens the individual, and in turn, the individual strengthens the collective. It is a feedback loop of resilience." The week continued with unrelenting intensity. Simulated combat scenarios pushed recruits to the edge of collapse, while deliberate sleep deprivation clouded their judgment. The aliens marveled as recruits devised unorthodox solutions under pressure, demonstrating an adaptability that defied prediction. One group managed to complete an obstacle by forming a human ladder, their trust in one another overriding the risks. By the end of the week, the recruits were battered, bruised, and barely standing. Yet when the final challenge was completed, they erupted into cheers, their exhaustion momentarily forgotten. The Zantrixians could scarcely believe what they were witnessing. "Tilvax," Lyrith said, her voice quieter now. "Their bodies and minds should have collapsed long ago. How do they continue?" Tilvax's antennae drooped in contemplation. "It is their willpower," he said. "The ability to endure beyond reason. It is something we have yet to understand, let alone replicate." The feed shifted to show recruits embracing one another, their faces alight with relief and pride. The Zantrixians sat in silence, grappling with the implications of what they had just seen. It was not merely physical resilience or intellect that defined these Deathworlders. It was something deeper, something uniquely human.